I want to start today's video a little differently than usual, because for once, this isn't a warning. It's actually good news, and it comes with a simple test you can try for yourself in the next 10 seconds, right where you're sitting or standing. Here's the test. Stand up, find a clear space near a wall or a sturdy chair just in case, lift one foot slightly off the ground, and see how long you can hold that position without putting your foot down or grabbing onto something for support. Researchers have found that being able to comfortably hold that position for 10 seconds is associated with something remarkable: a meaningfully lower risk of death from any cause over the following years, particularly in adults over 70, and evidence suggesting better overall cardiovascular and physiological health than your age alone would predict. If you just tried it and held it comfortably, that's genuinely great news, and I'm going to explain exactly why in the next few minutes. And if you found it harder than expected, that's useful information too. And importantly, it's something research suggests can often be improved, sometimes significantly, with simple, consistent practice. Either way, stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why a simple balance test tells researchers so much more about your underlying health than most people would ever expect. I want to say something before we go further because I think it sets the tone for the rest of this video. So much of the health content out there, including many of the videos on this very channel, focuses on warning signs, risks, and things to worry about. That information matters, and it has its place. But today, I wanted to bring you something a little different: a simple, hopeful measurement backed by real published research that gives you a genuine window into your own health in under 10 seconds, along with a clear, encouraging path forward no matter how the test goes for you. Let's talk about where this test actually comes from, because it isn't something a wellness influencer invented on social media. It's rooted in a body of published medical research examining what's sometimes called functional fitness, essentially, how well your body's various systems are working together in practice in the real world, rather than what a single lab value or blood test shows in isolation on a piece of paper. One of the most widely discussed studies on this topic, published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine, followed thousands of middle-aged and older adults over a period of years, testing their ability to balance on one leg for 10 seconds and then tracking their health outcomes over time. The findings were striking, and they've since been discussed extensively in both medical and general health circles. Adults who were unable to complete the 10-second balance test had a substantially higher risk of death from any cause during the study period compared to those who could complete it easily, even after researchers accounted for other known risk factors like age, existing health conditions, and body weight. This last point matters quite a bit because it means the test wasn't simply reflecting the fact that sicker or older people tend to have worse balance, something researchers already understood. It was providing additional, independent information beyond what those other factors alone could predict. Now, I want to explain why a test involving nothing more than standing on one leg would connect so strongly to overall health and mortality risk. Because at first glance, it might seem like an unusual thing to measure at all, disconnected from anything as serious as long-term survival. The answer is that balance isn't actually a single, isolated skill, the way you might think of it as just a party trick or a gymnastics requirement. It's the visible output of several different physiological systems working together simultaneously, and if any one of those systems isn't functioning well, your balance tends to suffer as a direct, measurable result. Here's what's actually being tested when you stand on one leg, and I want to walk through this carefully because it's genuinely more involved than most people would guess. Your inner ear, specifically the vestibular system, is constantly sending your brain information about your head's position and movement in space, functioning essentially as a built-in internal gyroscope. Your eyes are simultaneously providing visual reference points to help orient your body relative to the world around you. Sensors throughout your muscles, tendons, and joints, called proprioceptors, are continuously reporting on the exact position of your limbs at every single moment without you ever consciously thinking about it. And your cardiovascular system needs to maintain stable, adequate blood flow to your brain and working muscles throughout the entire effort, since even brief drops in blood flow can affect coordination, reaction time, and stability in ways you might not immediately recognize as balance-related at all. Your brain then has to rapidly integrate all of this information arriving from these different sources simultaneously and send precise, continuous signals to the muscles in your standing leg, ankle, and core, making constant tiny adjustments dozens of times per second to keep you upright and stable. This is a remarkably complex, coordinated process happening almost entirely automatically, and it depends on cardiovascular health, neurological function, and muscular strength all working together simultaneously in real time, without any conscious effort on your part under normal circumstances. When researchers find that people who struggle with this test tend to have worse health outcomes down the line, they're not suggesting that poor balance itself directly causes those outcomes, the way a specific disease might. They're recognizing that balance functions as a kind of composite readout, a single simple measurement that reflects the combined health of several different systems at once, some of which, like cardiovascular fitness, are directly tied to what people often think of loosely as heart age or overall physiological age, even though the test itself never directly measures the heart at all. This is exactly why researchers and clinicians have become increasingly interested in simple functional tests like this one over the past decade or so. Unlike a single blood test that measures one specific marker in isolation, disconnected from how your body actually performs in daily life, a test like the 10-second balance challenge captures something closer to your body's real-world, integrated performance, the way all of your systems function together during an actual physical task, rather than how any one system looks on paper by itself, in isolation from everything else. I also want to mention a closely related test that's received similar research attention because it tells a very similar story from a slightly different angle. Researchers studying what's called the sitting rising test asked adults to lower themselves to the floor and then stand back up again without using their hands, knees, or any other support, and then scored how smoothly and efficiently they were able to complete the entire movement. Similar to the balance test, adults who scored poorly on this movement showed a meaningfully higher risk of death over the following years compared to those who could complete it smoothly. Again, even after accounting for other known health factors like age and existing medical conditions. Both tests point toward the same broader conclusion, one that researchers have found repeatedly across different studies and different specific movements. How your body performs simple, everyday physical tasks reveals a great deal about your underlying health, often more than people realize, and often well before any single specific diagnosis would ever emerge on its own through traditional testing. This is sometimes referred to in research circles as functional age, as distinct from chronological age, the idea being that how well your body actually performs physically tells a more complete story than the number of years you've been alive. I find this genuinely fascinating because it flips the usual script we're used to hearing in health content. Instead of a hidden blood marker or an invisible process happening somewhere deep inside your body that you'd never notice on your own, this is something visible, something you can observe directly, something that doesn't require a lab, an appointment, or a single dollar spent. And yet it appears to carry real, meaningful information about your overall health trajectory. Why does this become especially relevant after 70? As we age, several of the physiological systems involved in balance tend to decline gradually, sometimes without us fully noticing day to day, since the change is slow and easy to accommodate for without realizing it's happening. Vestibular function in the inner ear can decline gradually over the decades. Muscle mass and strength, particularly in the legs and core, naturally decrease with age unless specifically maintained through regular activity, a process researchers sometimes call sarcopenia when it becomes significant. Nerve conduction, the speed and precision of signals traveling between your brain and muscles, can slow somewhat over time as well. And cardiovascular efficiency, how effectively your heart and blood vessels deliver oxygen to working muscles and to your brain, can also decline gradually, especially without regular physical activity to help maintain it, though the rate of that decline varies enormously from person to person. Here's the encouraging part, and it's the reason I wanted to frame this video around genuinely good news rather than another warning, which is admittedly a departure from how most of these videos are typically structured. Research on these systems has consistently found that many, though certainly not all, Age-related declines in balance and functional fitness are meaningfully influenced by activity level and training, not simply by the number of years someone has lived. In other words, chronological age and functional age are related, but they are not the same thing, and the gap between them appears to be at least partially within your control, which is genuinely empowering information if you think about it. This means that a 74-year-old who has stayed physically active, particularly through activities that challenge balance and leg strength, may perform on this test and on the underlying physiological systems it reflects more like someone considerably younger, sometimes markedly so. And genuinely, this is where the encouraging framing of this video comes from directly. If you tried the test at the start of this video and held it comfortably, that's a meaningful, positive signal about several different aspects of your health working well together right now, not just one isolated marker in isolation from everything else, but several interconnected systems all functioning well simultaneously. If you found the test more difficult than you expected, here is the important, hopeful part of what the research actually shows. Balance, unlike some other health markers, responds relatively well to targeted practice even later in life and even after it's already begun to decline somewhat. Several studies specifically examining balance training programs in older adults have found measurable improvements in balance performance after just a few weeks of consistent practice, along with associated reductions in fall risk, which is itself a major concern for health and independence after 70. Let's talk about a few simple, low-risk ways to work on this safely. Always keeping a wall, sturdy chair, or countertop nearby for support as needed while you practice, particularly at the beginning, when your body is still adapting to the exercise. The most direct approach is simply practicing the single leg stance itself a few times a day, gradually working to increase how long you can comfortably hold it, always with support nearby until you feel genuinely confident and stable. Even 30 seconds of practice, a few times daily, tends to produce noticeable improvement over several weeks, according to research on balance training protocols in older adults. Some people find it helpful to practice while brushing their teeth or waiting for coffee to brew. Small windows of time that already exist in a daily routine, rather than trying to carve out a separate dedicated session. Heel to toe walking, placing one foot directly in front of the other as though walking along a line on the floor, is another commonly used and well-studied balance exercise, one that specifically challenges the same coordinated systems involved in the standing test, while also improving confidence in everyday walking and turning. And more general activities that involve changes in direction, weight shifting, or single leg movements, such as Tai Chi, which has been specifically and extensively studied for fall prevention and balance improvement in older adults, or simply regular walking on slightly varied terrain rather than only flat, even surfaces, can meaningfully support these same underlying systems over time. Even gentle activities like gardening, which naturally involves bending, reaching, and shifting weight in different directions, appear to offer some of this same functional benefit simply as a side effect of the movement patterns involved. The key theme across all of these options is consistency rather than intensity. Research on balance training doesn't generally show that harder or longer sessions produce dramatically better results than shorter, more frequent practice. A few minutes most days of the week appears to be genuinely effective, which makes this one of the more accessible, low barrier interventions available for supporting healthy aging. Before we move to the important limitations of this test, there's one more related functional marker worth briefly mentioning because it follows the exact same logic and has received similar research attention: grip strength. Measured with a simple, inexpensive handheld device called a dynamometer, grip strength has been studied extensively as another surprisingly powerful predictor of overall health and longevity in older adults. Like balance, grip strength isn't really about your hands specifically. It's understood by researchers to reflect overall muscular health and physiological reserve throughout the body, since the same factors that maintain strong grip tend to maintain strength and function more broadly. Several large studies have found that grip strength predicts mortality risk and functional decline about as well as, and in some analyses even better than, several more complex and expensive clinical measurements. If you have access to a simple grip strength device, or if your doctor's office offers this measurement, it's a worthwhile complement to the balance test we've focused on today, since both tests are, in their own way, telling you the same underlying story: whole body functional health, expressed through a single, simple, easy to measure task. I want to be genuinely clear about something important here, because this test, like any single measurement, has real limitations worth understanding fully before you draw any strong conclusions from a single attempt. This is not a diagnostic tool, and struggling with it on a given day doesn't mean something is seriously wrong or that you should be alarmed. Balance can be affected temporarily by inner ear infections, certain medications, fatigue, dehydration, or simply an unfamiliar surface underfoot, none of which reflect your underlying long-term health. If you consistently struggle with this test across multiple attempts on different days, or if you notice a sudden significant change in your balance compared to how you felt just weeks or months earlier, that is absolutely worth discussing with your doctor, since it could reflect something worth evaluating directly, separate from the general age-related patterns we've discussed today. But for most people, this simple test offers something genuinely valuable: an easy, immediate, completely free way to get a rough sense of how several important physiological systems are functioning together right now in this moment, and a clear, research-supported path toward improvement if the result wasn't quite what you hoped for today. That combination, useful information plus an actionable path forward, is exactly what makes this test worth sharing. Let's bring everything together. The 10-second single leg balance test isn't measuring balance in isolation. It's capturing a composite readout of your vestibular system, muscular strength, nerve function, and cardiovascular efficiency, all working together at once in real time without conscious effort. Research has found that adults who struggle with this test tend to have a higher risk of death from any cause over the following years, while those who complete it comfortably tend to show better overall physiological health, broadly consistent with what people often describe informally as a younger heart age or physiological age. The closely related sitting-rising test tells a similar story from a different angle, reinforcing the same broader pattern. This becomes especially relevant after 70, when several of these underlying systems naturally tend to decline, though research consistently shows that activity level and targeted practice can meaningfully influence that decline, sometimes considerably, meaning the trajectory isn't fixed simply by the number of candles on your birthday cake. And importantly, if today's test didn't go quite the way you hoped, that isn't a permanent verdict on your health. It's simply useful information, along with a genuinely encouraging research-supported path toward improvement through simple, consistent practice that costs nothing and requires no special equipment. If this was useful, or if you were pleasantly surprised by how well you did, share this video with someone in your life over 70 who might enjoy some genuinely good news for once: a parent, a spouse, a friend, someone who's grown a little tired of health content that only ever seems to warn them about something new. Encourage them to try the test themselves, right there in the moment, and if they'd like to work on it, the simple exercises we covered today are a great low-risk place to start, requiring no equipment, no gym membership, and no significant time commitment. Subscribe for more videos like this one, and if there's a specific test, marker, or measurement you'd like us to break down next, positive or otherwise, leave it in the comments below, since this channel's topics are very often shaped directly by what viewers ask to see covered. Before we close, I want to leave you with one final thought. So much of how we think about aging is shaped by averages, statistics that describe what typically happens to typical people over time. But averages describe groups, not individuals, and the research we've covered today makes clear that the gap between chronological age and functional age is real, measurable, and at least partially within your influence. A simple 10-second test isn't just a party trick or a curiosity. It's a small, honest window into how well your body's various systems are actually working together, right now, today. And whether that window shows you something reassuring or something worth working on, either way, you now have real, actionable information that most people never think to check for themselves. Everything in this video is intended for educational and informational purposes only. It is not personal medical advice, a diagnosis, or a treatment recommendation. If you have concerns about your balance, a history of falls, or any condition that might make standing on one leg unsafe, please consult your physician before attempting this test or any new exercise. and always have sturdy support nearby when practicing balance exercises.